Psychology is all around us. Psychological elements can be seen throughout the lifespan, from birth until death. Films are a wonderful tool to explain psychological theory and occurrences in our lives. Characters interact within each frame of film psychological concepts. The films we remember most and view multiple times engage us by capturing the presence of these psychological dynamics in an authentic way. Please join me today, Dr. Katherine Marshall Woods, media psychologist and film consultant, and my guest today, Chris Files, with the film Out of the Shadows on the best psychology in film. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Best Psychology in Film with your host, Dr. Katherine Marshall Woods, and our lovely guest today with Chris Files, speaking about his wonderful film, Out of the Shadows. Thank you so much for coming on, Chris.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about Out of the Shadows?
Yeah, Out of the Shadows is a documentary, a short documentary, about 20 or so minutes, that shines a spotlight on the mental health crisis in rural America. You could argue there's a mental health crisis in America in general, but it really impacts rural America, especially agricultural America. Farmers, for example, are 3.5 times more likely to die by suicide than the general population. And simply living in a rural area, even if you don't farm, you're more than twice as likely to die by suicide. That's because of a combination of factors, the stigma that surrounds mental health and reaching out for help, the lack of resources available to our farmers and ranchers, and so much more. So working in agriculture, but on the creative side, we wanted to shine a light on this and try and inspire, some action.
Mhm. I can see why this is a very important film for individuals to be exposed to. Why don't we give our audience a moment to be able to see a clip, and we'll be right back.
I had a really good friend, and there were signs. Sorry, I'm trying to think about how to say this. There was some signs that he was unwell, but he was a man with strong faith, and everybody used to say, we got it. It's another year. We'll get through it. And he ended up taking his life, and it was a shock to a lot of us. You don't really know if maybe you could have said something different, or maybe he could have asked different questions to let anybody know what he was really feeling. And I just wonder about that sometimes.
Chris, you note some very important statistic regarding that farmers in particular are approximately 3.5 more times vulnerable to suicide, which actually the American Farm Bureau actually notes as well. They state that farming is a stressful occupation that is associated with increased levels of anxiety and depression in particular. Multiple studies show that farmers' suicides are greater than obviously the national average, albeit I want to highlight in 2024, more than 50,000 Americans took their lives, and farmers being 3.5% even higher than that. It's pretty substantial. And I want to note that those statistics are also coming from the same source here and the National Rural Health Association. Um, Additionally, they note that some of those factors that impact their stress levels are natural disasters, extreme weather events, financial uncertainties, fluctuating markets, labor shortages, trade disruptions, and other factors that all contribute to an extreme stress for farmers and ranchers who particularly live in rural areas, which can also feel pretty isolating. I think that this is a huge, obviously, concern that individuals are at higher risk of suicidality and that we may not be aware of it, especially individuals who live in urban areas. I'm wondering why you felt this film was important to make.
For so many reasons, but let's touch on the fact that so many of us don't even know it's a problem in the first place. If you live in in an urban area, it's really easy to take for granted the food that's on your plate every day. But that food was grown by a farmer or a rancher, oftentimes in America. And those farmers and ranchers struggle with forces that are often beyond their control. We all struggle at work with stress occasionally. It's nothing new. But for a farmer, they can't control the weather. They can't control the cost of inputs, fertilizer or anything else it takes to grow their crops. Often government regulations, so much of what causes a farmer stress is beyond their control. And they just feel that weight so hard. And when you combine that with the fact that there's a stigma that exists in rural America when it comes to asking for help for your mental health issues. There might be pressures to keep the family farm going. You might have a farm that's been in your family for 6 generations. And what if the farm goes under on your watch? Imagine that pressure. So, one of the biggest things we wanted to do with this documentary was simply shine a light on that issue and bring it to everybody's attention. And there's so much we can do. Just simply talking about it is doing something about it. And we're hoping that it inspires action with legislators and anyone who feels, compelled to make a difference.
Yes, I can imagine. You noted that the lack of resources play a very influential role in the vulnerability that these farmers have. Can you talk a little bit about what the lack of resources look like on the ground level for these farmers and ranchers?
Sure. Let's again say you live in urban America and you decide that you would like some help with your mental health. You're probably not too far from a mental health professional, a psychiatrist, a psychologist. If you live in rural America, you might be an hour, 2 hour drive. So even if you get to the point where you have accepted that you need that help and you want to seek it out, good for you. But you might be a couple hours drive each way to go to an appointment. And even when you go to an appointment, you might not want your truck to be seen. And these are small communities, right? What if your truck's seen by someone who knows you in the parking lot of the psychologist's office? Those are issues that are real and that really hinder people from seeking help. And beyond that, there's online help available, right? But the infrastructure in rural areas doesn't often support the kind of connection you would need to seek that online help. So it's just really kind of the perfect storm of issues when it comes to getting help in rural America.
Yeah, as a psychologist, and it's not that long ago that I was a training psychologist. And I remember during that time, we have to do an internship, which is a year long of training. And it was always very encouraged to be able to provide services in rural areas where individuals may not have the opportunity to be able to see a psychologist because there's so few. We talk about in urban settings frequently as psychologists that the goodness of the fit, right? You want a psychologist who you feel like understands you, who can hear you, who sees you. And that means you have options, right? If this psychologist doesn't work for you, you can find another one. You go through your insurance and you just locate another one that's maybe 5 or 10 minutes away, or like you said, virtually available, and you shop for therapists. And that may not be the case when there may only be one psychologist available 2 hours away. And that also means that they have appointments available, that they're not over scheduled as well. So I really hear the plight that individuals within rural areas could really have to be able to access mental health care for themselves. Um, One of the things that you noted of this farm could be in someone's life for 6 generations and in their family. And what if it goes under while they're watching it? And you said they also have a lot of unpredictability, like things aren't in their control. I'm wondering, how is that generally mitigated? Do Are farmers thinking and have some idea as to how the farmers of yesteryears actually coped with this?
We've actually, on the bright side, made some progress in that regard. Today, people talk about their mental health with a certain greater ease than they used to, but that doesn't mean we're where we need to be. Um, the farmers of yesteryear they definitely struggled with these same struggles that we're talking about today, but I don't think they talked about it as much as they do today. And beyond that, we've never felt the kind of pressures that we feel now with government regulations, with there are weather issues that just simply didn't exist decades ago. So whatever problems we have today, they certainly had them. The farmers of yesteryear certainly had them, but in some cases they're magnified today. So um, that's on the maybe not as bright of a note, but on a brighter note, we're making progress when it comes to talking about our mental health, and I hope that continues.
Yes. Do you feel like then, Chris, that part of this film is an environmental film in that capacity?
Sure, absolutely. Farmers are good stewards of the land because that's their livelihood. Beyond being environmentalists, which they really are, they're taking care of their livelihood by taking care of the land. And so often, agriculture farmers, they have a target on their back there's so many pieces out there that attack farmers for their impact on the environment. But I would encourage anybody to spend a day on the farm and see how a farmer or a rancher takes care of the land, because that is how they support their family. That is how they keep their legacy alive. And there probably is not a better steward of the environment than a farmer.
I hear what an advocate you are for this career choice, really, and this lifestyle choice, because it seems to be both. I do, as a psychologist, when I watched your film and was thinking about the stress that they're under, I was thinking that unlike many careers where you go to work, you do your job, you leave and go home, the farm is their life. It's not just a career choice. It's also where they live. It's how they raise their family. It's also their values many times that they have, that values that's come from generation and generation. I'm wondering if the farmers that you were in collaboration with felt that way, that this land is really a part of their identity rather than just a career choice to feed other people around the world.
Absolutely. It's a good question. There's a line in the documentary that goes something like, if a farm ceases to exist, the farmer ceases to exist, in a way. And it's their land, their operation is so tied to their identity that to lose that in some ways means to lose yourself. And that's a really, really, really scary thought. And I have to just take a moment and applaud the farmers and ranchers that we talked to for this documentary. It's one thing to make it. It was a very eye-opening experience to make it. It's another thing to tell a painful story for the better of the greater good, if you will. You'll notice when you watch the documentary, we talk to people who have lost loved ones to suicide, who have been through some real struggles, and those are not fun stories to retell to people. But I really have to applaud the subjects in the documentary for doing so, for going to that uncomfortable place so that someone else maybe doesn't have to go through the same thing.
For those of the audience who watch this show quite often, I fear that I will be a broken record here, but I do want to highlight exactly what that process is because I do feel like it's an important psychological defense and dynamic that we use to be able to protect ourselves and heal at the same time, which is sublimation, using painful events in our lives in order to create something for someone else's benefit. And that is what we understand is the most higher order defense mechanism someone can use. We're not in denial. We're not repressing it and saying we don't remember it or we're trying to put it underneath the surface. We say, this is what happened. This is a concern, and let's talk about it. So then hopefully someone else doesn't have to go through this again or go through it in the same way. What can we do to create change and evolution? Mm, That's kind of what farmers do too, is they create evolution for us all. Without them, we wouldn't exist. So
That's right.
it's such a
That's right.
beautiful circle.
Yeah. So many of the people we talked to, I get that I get the path you're headed down, and I agree. So I feel like the people that we talked to, we're sort of saying, how do we make lemonade out of these lemons? How do we help others with the story that we've been through? I've been through my own mental health journey, and it was a very cathartic experience to make this documentary, because when you go through something like these people have been through, you don't want anyone else to go through it as well. And I feel like there's a part of you that says, maybe part of the reason I went through this is so others don't have to, so I can help others with this.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. When we come back, I actually have a particular aspect of the film that I wanted to discuss with you, and you kind of brought it to our surface, so it'll be a nice segue, which is about the feeling of being alone. So when we come back, we will return with Out of the Shadows with Chris Files. We'll be back in a moment.
Hello, I'm Dwayne Jones. I'm thrilled to introduce you to the University of the District of Columbia's College of Agriculture, Urban Sustainability, and Environmental Sciences Causes, a beacon of transformative education. Our diverse academic programs nurture leaders of tomorrow. Causes is committed to providing land-grant opportunities that empower communities and foster a more sustainable and resilient future. Causes is a journey of growth, discovery, and making a difference.
Welcome back. Today we have our guest, Chris Files, the filmmaker behind Out of the Shadows. This is a film that recently won a 2025 Social Impact and Documentary Award, Telly Award. So congratulations on that achievement, those
Thank
achievements.
you so much. Thank you. I see a telly behind you, so it's neat to be part of the club.
It's part of the club in good company.
Hmm.
We were talking about really the challenges that farmers face and which makes them vulnerable to higher levels than the national average for suicide rates here in America, which is a huge, obvious problem for this community, one that we are really, as anywhere in the United States, reliant upon these farmers for our livelihood as well, our grocery, in particular, our dairy. The ease in which we obtain that is all really based upon their labors and how hopefully grateful we are for their services. And yet they are experiencing high levels of stress, anxiety, depression that lead them to take their lives. One of the aspects that was in the film was how alone an individual can feel being on a farm. I was sharing with you during the break, I actually have some farming experience, and honestly, those alone, independent times were moments that I craved. It was beautiful being out in acres of land, being alone, and what that can do for your mental health and rejuvenate you and fulfill you. And it also sounds like it can have another feature and aspect on an individual. And I'm wondering how you highlighted that in the film.
Sure, and I can relate to craving alone time. I have 3 children, so it can be tough to come by. But when you're struggling with your mental health, idle time is often a real problem, and farmers have so much idle time. They're busy, but they're busy alone a lot of times. So let's say you have anxiety or depression, and your job that day is 8 hours on the combine. So you have nothing but time to just ruminate on the stress of it all and whatever might be bothering you. And by the time the day ends, you are a mess, often with nobody to talk to, or because of the stigma that exists, you don't want to talk to somebody. So yeah, just being alone with nothing but time to ruminate is a real issue in rural America. And it's why we encourage people to just check in on each other, check in on your neighbor, just send a text or something like that to help people realize, hey, you're not alone. Someone's thinking of you right now. That simple act can make a huge difference.
Do you feel like the farmers with whom you had the privilege to being able to share their stories, do they feel like other farmers also get the stress that they're under? Or do they feel like the stress that my farm is under, that I'm carrying, is independent from other farmers, that it must be different? Or do they have a sense of community with each other? Or is that where that stigma comes from? Like, this is just me, I'm carrying it, and I'm so ashamed.
Yeah, well, there's a sense of community in rural America, but mental health is still not a topic that so many farmers and ranchers are comfortable talking about. And isn't it a shame? You'll have two farmers who might meet up for lunch or coffee or something like that, both likely struggling with the same thing, who just are too embarrassed to talk about that. And that surfaces time and time again in the documentary. And it shows up a couple times. One of the experts in there says, what if we talked about our mental health with the same ease we talk about having a broken bone or the flu or something? Why are we so comfortable talking about that, but we're not comfortable talking about our mental health, which is often something beyond our control as well, just like any other illness? Wouldn't it be nice if we could get to that? I think it would save lives.
I imagine that it would save lives. This is certainly a metaphor that we talk about in therapeutic services quite often, specifically as it relates to stigma, is that we do have a comfort of going to a physician and saying, I'm in pain because I just dislocated my shoulder, but somehow really having a hard time going to a psychologist or a psychiatrist when one is in pain psychically, and feeling like we should be able to figure that out on our own without the assistance of trained professionals who want to be there for that purpose. Um, the feeling of being alone also came from what I was hearing also from the film is this significant level of responsibility, taking care of the family, as you noted, taking care of the family legacy. And I'm wondering about how the family, who have obviously chosen to talk to you for this film, how are they coping now thereafter, given this too? Coping with the death of a loved one, coping with the death of a loved one by suicide in particular, because of that stigma adds a lot of stress as well. How are they coping with this, knowing that there's a community of people out there that's experiencing the same, but also knowing that it may be hard to come forth and talk to people about what they're experiencing on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. Well, first of all, losing someone to suicide is something you never get over. It will always be with you. It'll always be a weight that will hang on you. But how do you cope with it? And the people that we talked to are so brave and so vulnerable for telling their story. And that's part of how they cope with it. To discuss something that's difficult to discuss, yes, it's hard, but it also addresses the elephant in the room. It also takes some of the weight off of the story to help other people because of what you've been through. Take some of the weight off of the story. And most of the people we talked to have gotten to a place where they are comfortable seeking help, professional help from a mental health professional. And their hope, I'm not putting words in their mouth to say that their hope is that others can do the same thing. That's part of why they were so open to talk to us. They want others to feel that they can do the same thing. It was really neat to make this film and to see these tough grizzled farmers who spend all day on this big equipment and just work till their hands are bloodied and calloused, talk about their mental health and how open they are to receiving help from professionals and encourage others to do the same. That lands so well with an audience versus me saying the same thing to a farmer.
For us urban dwellers, what can we do? What can we do to help?
Well, you can go to a farmer's market and thank the people you're buying the product from and consider what went into everything you're eating. And just, I think that will endear respect for the art in some cases, but the profession certainly of agriculture. Secondly, just talking about it is doing something about it. Spreading this documentary or anything else, any articles you might read, just spreading the word that there's a mental health crisis in rural America is doing something about it. And just, if it sounds cheesy, forgive me, but thank a farmer. Thank a farmer for what they do, support local agriculture, and just be open to talking to other people about your mental health struggles, because if we can just kind of get that ball rolling, hopefully it will never stop.
Yeah, yeah, agreed.
Mhm.
You have resources on your website. Tell us about that in the event a farmer or someone is experiencing feelings of suicidal ideation, what resources are out there for individuals to access?
Yeah, if we've parked the documentary at outoftheshadowsdoc.com. So you can go there, you can watch it, you can download it, send it to somebody. There are a few resources there for anyone seeking mental help. Um, there really are many local resources and national resources available, so much so that it can be confusing on who to contact. So we've just simplified it. Our message in the documentary is 988. Call 988. It's the 911 for mental health professionals. And if you call 988, they can either help you immediately or they can funnel you to a more local resource. But that's a really easy thing to say for someone who might be looking for help. And you can call it for somebody else. I work for the Farm Credit System, who is an agricultural lender, and you'll notice when you watch the documentary, our logo is nowhere in there. We didn't make this for credit or for any branding purposes or anything like that. We just wanted people to be able to use it without hindrance because there's a logo or someone's brand in there. You have no idea who made this documentary if you watch it, and that's on purpose. We just want it to be available as a way to help people.
That is wonderful. 988. Very good number to have just in memory, similar to 911. Given again that statistic that I noted earlier, 50,000 Americans chose to take their own lives. And again, farmers being 3.5% at a higher vulnerability, this is a number that we should all have available to us to access to be able to help anyone who we feel who's in need, including ourselves if necessary. Thank you, Chris, for your work in this film that is a social impact film, an environmentalistic film. This is just such a wonderful film. If anyone has a affinity to farming, and if not, this is still a very important film to watch. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And finally, I would just encourage anyone, if they're in a situation where they notice someone might be struggling, yes, it can be awkward to say, are you going to be okay? Are you thinking of hurting yourself? Go ahead and ask anyway. I promise it will be okay. At the very least, you suffer through an awkward moment. At the very most, you might save a life. So go ahead and do that, please.
I agree. And I want to just add one more thing to that. Generally, no one will ever be angry with you caring that much about them.
I like that. That's very true.